Hello, hi, good morning. Welcome back to my channel where I make lifestyle videos about books, beauty, and sustainability. So today I had an entirely different video planned, but it turns out it's the end of September, so I have to do a September reading wrap-up. Now, I read 6 books this month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for me is actually quite a bit. It's not that I'm a slow reader, it's that I probably just don't allocate as much time as I possibly could or maybe should to reading, so I'm not somebody who can get through a lot of books in a month. The way I kind of cheat this typically is to read a graphic novel or two or a really short book to kind of make up for it, but I didn't do that this month. All of the books I read are minimum 200 pages and some of them were closer to 500, so I'm actually quite proud of that. I've also got a guest in the studio today. My dog Casper is having a needy day and he wants to be close by. So if you hear panting in the background, that is courtesy of Casper. He likes to spend time with me when my mom isn't home and she's at work right now, so he needs a friend. Alrighty, so without further ado, let's dive on into the books. So the first book I completed this month is Fangirl by Rowell. And I just want to start by saying that I absolutely loved this book. I loved it so much. Despite it being quite long, I got through it pretty quickly. So this is the first of 3 YA novels that I will be talking about today. This one in particular is a contemporary romance. So this book is about our main character, Cather, and her twin sister, Wren, who start at a university. And the two of them, for their entire lives, have been inseparable, always doing the same things, going to the same school, living in the same bedroom. But now, Wren decides that she wants to go off on her own. And Cath is resistant to this. She likes having this security blanket of her sister around and is sort of angry at her for abandoning her. So because of this, Cath's semester kind of starts off a bit rough. And the book kind of goes through her as she sort of gains her footing and kind of figures out who she is independently of her sister. I will say that while there could be certain content warnings in terms of mental health and alcoholism, somehow I felt really safe reading this book, and I felt like I knew that while there were some serious things that were happening, I don't know why, but somehow I felt reassured that nothing too terrible or dark or disturbing was going to happen. So I don't know, maybe that's just me, but in my opinion, this was kind of a lighter and fluffy read and was just like a really cozy and comforting read. I think it was also really perfect reading it during the back to school season. And the reason it's called Fangirl is because Cath is a famous fan fiction writer. Totally forgot to mention that. And the book does feature little excerpts of both her fan fiction and also the novels that it's based off of, which Rowell has turned into a series in and of itself. I did try to start that series, but it wasn't really my thing, and I honestly wish that I had more time with these characters and that this had become a series as opposed to Simon's No. But oh well, you can't always get what you want. But 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book and would recommend. Next up, we have I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. So I would categorize this book as a contemporary romance, and it features some elements of magical realism. So it follows a pair of twins, Jude and Noah, and it kind of bounces back and forth between both their perspectives and also 2 different timelines. I would say the main message of this book is the importance of honesty and trust in relationships. I did like this book, but it was also kind of weird, and I feel like it wouldn't be for everyone. But it was enjoyable and it did have some queer representation. I ended up giving it 4 stars, so I would read the synopsis and it sounds like it's something that might appeal to you, then I would go for it, but I feel like, again, it's not for everyone, so I would check that first. And you might want to check the content warnings for this one as well. The next book I read, and the last out of the YA books I read this month, was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire or Alire Sáenz. Not 100% sure on the pronunciation, apologies. So this book follows 2 teenage boys, Aristotle and Dante, and it's a coming of age story, and some of the themes explored in the book include sexuality, cultural identity, family. Again, this book also has queer representation. I really have to agree with everyone who says that this book is beautifully written. It really is. This is going to be a bit spoilery, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear it, but one of the things that didn't quite work for me, which was the reason I knocked 1 star off of my rating. It ended up being a 4-star read for me because I found that the ending was a little bit rushed in the sense that Aristotle's feelings for Dante weren't fully developed in the novel. Aristotle is told that he has feelings for Dante. He doesn't figure this out himself. And based on his internal monologues and descriptions, I didn't find that believable. There weren't enough hints for me of like a subconscious affection poking through. I would have liked just a little bit more of that to make it more believable. So while I know this one is a series, I really enjoyed it as a standalone, so I don't think I'll be continuing on reading the series. But otherwise I can see why people love this book so much, and I am still very happy that I read it. Next up, and this book was featured in my spooky TBR, I read Thornhill by Pam Smy. So this one is a middle grade horror book about a haunted house and the little girl who haunts it. What I found really interesting about this book, and as I mentioned in my spooky TBR, is that it's told in 2 timelines but through 2 different mediums. So the present is told through graphic novel, whereas the past is told mostly through diary entries, but in text format. So I thought that that was a really creative way to tell a story. The one thing I will say about this book was I was not super thrilled with the ending, but then again, horror doesn't necessarily owe you a satisfying ending, and there isn't necessarily like a moral to this story either. So while the house in present day is being haunted by a ghost, there are subtle hints that perhaps the house in and of itself was haunted before this girl's death, and that it might have played a bit more of an active role in the unfolding of events leading to her death and then haunting the house. If you know of a middle grade aged kid who's interested in horror but something that's not too spooky or scary, I would recommend this book for them. But I think for anyone who's older, this story might not be gripping enough for you. I did like this story, but again, I think I was just a bit too old for it. It wasn't really for me, so I ended up giving it about 3 stars. If you do want something similar though, I would recommend the graphic novel Through the Woods by Emily Carrol, which is a spooky graphic novel that features a collection of short stories. I really enjoyed that one. The art style in it is beautiful. It also has a unsatisfying ending, but I think this one is probably more worth your time. Next up, I read The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and this is by Stuart Turton. This one is a crime thriller murder mystery where the main character wakes up in a different body of a different guest at the same party over the same weekend for 8 days in a row, and his job is to solve the mystery of Evelyn Hardcastle's death, which takes place at the end of each night. I thought this book did an excellent job at keeping you on your toes and entertained and invested in the story. There were constantly little details being revealed and clues being left and little mysteries that had to be solved in order to arrive at the answer to the 2 big questions, which was first, who killed Evelyn Hardcastle, and second, why is our main character tasked with solving this murder, and the explanation behind the supernatural happenings or phenomena. I ended up giving this book about 4 stars. I think the mystery aspect of it is solid. I wasn't super thrilled with the explanation behind the supernatural. This book wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I thought that the main character would be taking more of a back seat and watching the guests go about their day as opposed to being in control of the bodies and making the decisions. As well as I didn't think that the supernatural elements would be presented so forwardly. I figured that would be something that would just kind of unravel itself at the end once the mystery was solved. I think I expected it to have more like Clue vibes, which it definitely did, but I think it stepped a bit further away from that than what I was expecting. Or maybe I'm just new to adult fiction. I don't know, there was something for me that didn't make this my absolute favorite and that kept me from giving it a 5-star rating, but it is a solid book and I would recommend it to basically anyone who's interested in these type of themes and genres. And last but not least, I read Love Lives Here, a story of a thriving transgender family, and this one is by Jette Knox. So this is an autobiographical memoir and essentially tells the story of Jette Knox's daughter who came out as transgender and the series of events that unfolded after which, and the domino effect that ended up having on the family. Knox tells the story in such a honest and raw, unabashed way, unafraid to go into the details of the good, the bad, the ugly, and also in a way that keeps you on your toes and you're enthralled in the story and you can't put it down. I think a lot of people people will find comfort in this book. I think this is a valuable resource, especially for people who have recently had someone come out in their lives, and maybe they're looking for resources, they're looking to understand what's happening, but they're also looking for connection and to see people who've had similar experiences and how they dealt with them. This book got an immediate 5 out of 5 stars for me. I absolutely tore through it. I love it. I would recommend it to everyone and anyone. I think we can all learn something from this book. So those were all of the books I read in September. If you've read any of these books, please let me know what you thought of them. And also please let me know what you read in September, or maybe some of the books that you plan on reading in October. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye!